Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, brings you information on how you can recover from any mental health issue and achieve a happier life. Each episode interviews experts like doctors, counselors, and life artists who give helpful tips on living a happier life. But most importantly, Bob interviews ordinary people who have suffered with a mental health issue, some on the brink of or attempted to take their own lives. Each one has recovered to lead a much happier life. Most of the guests have books or websites with more info that you can use for recovery. You can do it too. If you want to know more, please check out his trailer. Bob's notes on today's show follows.
Michael Scholtes suffers with major depression and anxiety. He is also a pastor of a Lutheran church. So how can a man of faith have depression? Depression can strike anyone anywhere. It doesn't have favorites. He describes it as two voices that he hears constantly, the dark voice of depression that tells him that he is worthless and horrible, and the still, small voice of God who whispers to him that he is beloved and worthy. He has a unique perspective to offer people of faith a deep and thoughtful experience of depression. Michael believes that he can offer hope to people who live with mental illness. So come join Michael for his journey through depression.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
Hey, Michael, how you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Nice to have you here. Could you tell the listener a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and I've been a Lutheran my whole life. Grew up in a house where my father was also a pastor, and my mother was a church organist. So faith is kind of was part of the air I breathed growing up. So I grew up with a pretty strong faith, and obviously still have it today. But along with that, as I grew up, I realized that I was also living with depression. Ever since I was probably a preteen, I noticed that I've got this problem that I will sometimes feel incredibly down, or more often, feel this intense self-loathing that I think that I'm absolutely worthless.
I hear you. I call him the demon.
Sure. I have taken to calling it the dark voice, but I think demon is just as good a word. Absolutely, because it's just this nasty side that just seems to want me to be miserable, and is always there.
Could you tell us a little bit about your childhood? As a child, were you happy most of the time? When did the depression start? Well,
I mean, I had a good childhood. My parents were very loving. I don't have any kind of trauma in my past. My father, sometimes we think of pastors as being very, overbearing and controlling. That's not the way my father was. He was, someone who always cared about us. My mother was very loving as well. I have one younger sister who she and I did not get along at all when we were children. But since we grew up, we've kind of buried all that, and we're good friends now. But yeah, I wasn't always happy. One thing that was part of who I was kind of the smart kid in my school, and my teachers and my principal always told me that. It was a small school, it was kind of a small pond, but I was certainly the big fish there. That my teachers thought I was the greatest thing that had ever happened to that school, and yet the other kids didn't really feel that way. I could be obnoxious and arrogant, and I didn't make friends that way so much. So I, even from a young age, I had these two different voices telling me, that you're really great, and another voice telling me, you're annoying and we don't like you. And so that, and as I grew older, that we don't like you voice kind of turned inward and became part of my inner monologue that if I'm not perfect, I think it was partially because I was this whiz kid in school. Things came so easily to me, and so if I didn't do something right the first time, I felt like I was broken. There was something wrong with me. I was a failure. So I went really back and forth. I was a very moody kid. Didn't really know anything about mental illness as a child. I grew up in the 80s, and it wasn't really talked about the way it is today. Certainly among kids.
Nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. And so I just thought I was this moody kid, and it was just going to be my life.
Was anyone in your family, like your father or maybe your sister, do they have any signs of depression?
Not really. I've got some relatives who I think have undiagnosed depression, but no one in my immediate family has ever been diagnosed or really seems to deal with the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
Do you take medicine for?
I do. Yeah, I take antidepressant medicine. I take Cymbalta right now. I've tried a couple different meds, and that's the one that seems to be working well now. I'm also I also am in talk therapy every 2 weeks. I see my therapist, and I see a spiritual director as well, which is a helpful thing in my case. So.
Right. Do people come to you with, and they must come to you with their problems, right?
As a pastor?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. People come to me with the things going on in their lives, and I think that people come to me more freely about mental illness issues than they would otherwise, because I've been so open about it in my congregation.
Right. Yeah,
I decided early on at the congregation I'm at now. I've been here 10 years, and it was about when I was here about 6 months. I shared it in a sermon. I don't remember exactly the topic of the sermon, but somehow or another, I was saying that we all struggle with different things in our lives.
Of course.
And I said that, one of the things I struggle with is depression. And I described what that is and how I experience it. And then I invited the congregation, if you're comfortable, to call out right now the thing that you're struggling with. And I expected that I'd hear crickets. I thought maybe 2 or 3 people would say something, but I was floored that a couple dozen people called things out. They called things like anxiety or cancer or struggles with my grandkids, and a few people said depression as well. So it really became a safe place for me to be open about it. And I think in the process, other people are more open to talking to me about it because they know that I get it.
Right. And do you have a classification for your depression? Is it a bipolar thing? Is it just kind of like whatever, quote unquote, normal depression?
Yeah, it's like garden variety. I guess it's major depressive disorder. And it kind of goes from mild to severe depending on when it is. I've sometimes thought that I have something called double depression, which is when you have both persistent depressive disorder, which is this low-grade depression that just stays with you for years. And then on top of that, you have these episodes of severe depression. I think that might be what I have, but I'm not, and I haven't been diagnosed with that.
I think you said that you were in the hospital as well?
When I was 17, I had a suicide attempt. I was convinced that I had hurt a friend of mine through words that I had been very insensitive, and that I had done something that was just beyond the pale. Now, in reality, maybe I had said something that upset her, but it was not what I thought it was. But in my head, I felt so guilty and felt like I could never do anything right. And I was convinced that the best thing I could do for the world would be to take myself out of it. And so I walked down to a park that was a couple blocks off campus and climbed a tree with every intention of hanging myself. I even prayed to God for help on this. I'm not sure that I believe that God wanted me to do it, but I was convinced that God understood that I had to, that this was the best thing. So I prayed for strength, and right when I was about to jump, I had the noose wrapped around my neck, and right when I was about to jump, I saw this light in the distance that, I think, on one level, I think it was just somebody turning their garage light on or something like that. But what I saw in that moment was the Star of Bethlehem. I saw that as a sign from God saying, don't do this.
Boy, I'm
there
glad you
is
did.
light, there is hope. And I climbed down from the tree, and I stopped myself, and I climbed back down and went, I just went back to my dorm room and went to bed. I didn't even tell anybody about it. Until a few days later, I started feeling physically sick, like I had a flu or something. So I went to the student health center, and they checked me out and said there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. They said, "Are you under any stress lately?" And I said, "Well," I did try to kill myself a few days ago.
That's the wrong answer.
Yeah, we're exactly. So that
never say you tried to kill yourself. Never.
I learned that really fast, because the next thing I know, I had to call my parents to pick me up, and I was not allowed back on campus until I had a doctor's note saying that I was no longer a danger to myself, and that led to an 11-day stay in a mental hospital, which was not something that I wanted to do. At the very beginning of it, I was miserable and just wanted to go home. And I thought, I don't need to be here. But after a couple of days, I started to really appreciate that this was something I needed. And I think the biggest impact it had on me was when I realized that all of the other people who were in this floor with me were just normal people who were having trouble coping with something. It wasn't, I had this, one flew over the cuckoo's nest idea of what mental hospitals were like. And it wasn't like that. Yeah. And I realized that if they're just normal people who are struggling to cope with something, then maybe that's who I am too. And maybe I need to accept some help with this. And that was kind of the beginning of getting help. And, it changed my life.
Way back when I had this anxiety attack, which is one of my, I describe it in one of my episodes, episode 4, which is very, very popular. It's called Beating Severe Anxiety and Depression. Okay. And I'm surprised that it's light years ahead of all of my other episodes as far as people looking at, going to it. So in there, I talk about my anxiety, because that really is the biggest problem I have. I mean, I get, even now when I go on podcast interviews and stuff, I get very nervous. I mean, usually I do great, but I get very nervous. And that's a big problem in my life. But do you have a high anxiety, or is it just depression?
No, I absolutely have anxiety as well. And I was nervous today about this interview. And this is like the 10th interview I've done in the last few months. I shouldn't be nervous about it, but I am.
Were you nervous on the other interviews, or just mine?
Everyone.
You're doing great, though.
And I always feel good at the end. At the end of it, I always look back and say that was, that was great. I don't know why I get nervous about this stuff, but I do.
Yeah, me too. I just have a fear of talking, because with my ADHD, I forget words, and then there's that empty, awkward silence, and I'll have an anxiety attack when that happens. My mind will go blank. It happened just before when we were talking. My mind will go blank, and I have to wait 1, 2, 3, 4 until it comes back. So it's very scary, and that's really. Well, what happened to me as a child is I got interrupted all the time. Because I didn't have ADHD, and I didn't know how to pick up on social cues. I didn't know how to enter into the conversation. So, it's a big problem. But with your anxiety, is it better now that you're on the medicine and getting counseling?
It certainly helps. It helps. I also have a prescription for any anxiety that I just take when I need it, which is usually before congregation council meetings, that kind of thing at church. It certainly helps, and I find that that kind of slowing down and trying to be mindful helps too. Like when I stop myself and think, hold on, why are you anxious about this? What are you really worried about? And if I realize that I have no rational reason to be anxious, it's just something going on. It doesn't take it away, but it does make it easier to cope with, for sure.
How about when you preach? Does that make you anxious when you go up to preach?
No, that doesn't. And the interesting thing about preaching and leading worship is, I noticed years ago that if I had this time of year, I'll often have a cold or some kind of bad sniffles or something. If I'm feeling like that and I think I can't lead worship today, I'm going to be blowing my nose every 2 minutes, coughing all the time. Suddenly that goes away for the hour that I'm leading worship. It comes back. Wow. But I've also noticed that tends to happen with anxiety as well. It kind of just goes away for that time.
It comes and
again,
goes,
not permanently. It comes back, but I'm so grateful that I'm able to just kind of function in that way, without it taking over.
Obviously, you love people. Now, I have to say, I was waiting to say this. My son is a non-denominational pastor.
Oh.
Yeah. And I am pretty, I guess the word is agnostic, which doesn't mean I don't have a God, but my version of God is a lot different than any religion out there. I pray to God all the time when I have problems or not. And, 9 out of 10 times, it's okay,
Yeah.
Things get better. So far, so good. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's the gift of faith. And I'm not going to tell you that my understanding of God is better than yours. I have no idea. But if God gives you, if your understanding of God gives you comfort and peace, then go with it. I think that's it's coming from the same place that my understanding of God is coming from. Then,
I view God as something that each person has, and that each person's God can be a little bit different.
Sure.
So when you preach at the churches about depression, you say most people are very positive. Did you ever get people that come up and say, "Hey, wait, what are you, crazy? Are you mentally, crazy?" Or did you ever have that situation?
I haven't had that, gratefully. I know there are definitely places where I could have that response. I have had responses of just kind of uncomfortable silence. There was a church that I used to be at where I opened up about this, and nobody talked about it at all afterward. It was, I got the sense that people kind of wished I hadn't said anything, and if they don't say anything now, maybe it will just go away. And that was uncomfortable for me, but thankfully it wasn't it wasn't someone coming and telling me no, this isn't real. You need to just believe more, and you wouldn't be depressed.
Yeah, I would imagine if they thought you were crazy, they would stop going. I don't know, but
yeah, I think you're right. Right. Yeah,
that's a stigma that's out there,
and that could be the case where I'm at now. It could, there's always people in and out of churches. There could be maybe somebody who doesn't come to my church now. It could be that reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's true, but I know there's a big stigma out there. That some people just cannot handle looking at their mental state.
Yeah.
I talk about it a lot. Most people have something to cover up that final layer of fear. But what I am trying to do is get to the final stage of fear and then invite all my demons to come in and say hello to them. In other words, just hello, hello, demon. How you doing? How's your kids? That helps a lot. I don't believe it. There's a technique called EFT where you tap your meridians and stuff. And apparently, if you can focus enough on where your pain is coming or where the anxiety is coming from, you can meet the demon head to head.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth about it is, they're just like a bully.
Mm-hmm.
You punch them in the face.
Yeah, right.
If you punch them in the face, they won't come back.
Yeah.
They'll leave. They'll leave your house and not come back. But that's the goal of the show. Is I pretty much like everybody who's listening to come with me on my journey through the last couple of layers of depression. And I'm hoping at the end of that rainbow, it's going to be, that was the old name of the show, Over the Rainbow. Yeah. I keep it in there most of that's OTR. But, I'm hoping that one day, we can all come to this conclusion and we can stop covering up. We can stop cutting ourselves. We can stop being a bully. We can stop not thinking you ever made a mistake. All these things, not to mention addictions, but these are all addictions. I was addicted to adrenaline when I worked.
Sure.
Because of my ADHD, I was so nervous all the time. But when I got into the meeting and I knew what I was talking about, I was so calm. So it was all that adrenaline would rush to my head. So, and then on the weekend, I would crash.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you find that, like, in certain moments or certain days that you feel worse than other days?
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned addiction, and I one thing that I've been exploring with my counselor for the last couple of months is there a sense in which I'm addicted to being depressed? Has that become so much of my identity that's who I am? I'm the depressed pastor. I need to,
right.
And I think there's something to that, which is really scary to kind of think, what's my identity below that? There's something really unknown and scary about that.
Yes,
we're exploring that together, and it's challenging.
Yeah. I feel the same. I feel that everything we do about depression, like anxiety and stuff, it gives us the chemicals we need in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not doing drugs or taking alcohol, we're being adrenaline junkies.
Sure.
And I think, that's depression is who you are. I would agree that's kind of an addiction.
Yeah.
And that's maybe stopping you from getting better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm no expert. Don't try this at home. But
no. No, but that's something that, like I said, I've been exploring with my counselor. So it's definitely up there. And I think one of the things I do in the way I preach and in the way I talk about this is to say that my true identity is as a child of God. That's my identity is given to me by God, and in my faith tradition, we say that comes through baptism. That it's through my baptism that God claimed me as His own, and I try to hold on to that. That even those moments when I hear the dark voice so loudly telling me that I'm a piece of garbage, there's this other voice, the voice of God, telling me, "Don't listen to him. You are what I made you. You are good. You are worthy, and I've got a plan for you." And even saying that out loud can be hard sometimes. I've been practicing. About a year ago, I started practicing looking in the mirror and saying, "I love you." And the first time I did that, I flinched because it was so uncomfortable for me. I'm so not used to saying that to myself. But I think, those kind of things are so important. Yeah.
That is such an answer to our problems.
Yeah.
You have to learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be self-loathing and give up and give into the demons. You have to stay in the ring, even though you get knocked down over and over again.
Yeah.
You get up and it's like Rocky. You get up and you keep punching.
Yeah.
You keep punching the demons. And eventually, I'm hoping they will all go away.
Yeah.
I've improved my life so much since that day when I had that really bad attack.
Yeah. I
have a lot of happy moments, and I contributed to working so hard and reading and counseling and so this on this show. I'm just trying to say to everybody, your depression is not the end of the world, and you can get better. Every day you can get better, and there's new things coming out, like the mushroom therapy.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So I say to people that are listening, if they're ready to climb the tree and hang themselves, no, you can get better. That suicide is a temporary fix for a problem that's not permanent. So just wait it out. And that's what I say on episode 4. I waited it out. It took 6 months, but you wait it out. And you go from Xanax to Xanax if you have to.
There's hope. But I think that's what I'm hearing you say is that there's hope.
There's hope. And that's what this is all about, is hope.
Yeah.
But the thing, what I wanted to talk to you wrote a book about all of this?
Yes.
Can you give us some info on that?
Yeah, I it was about 6 months ago. I published a book called Dark Water, a pastor's memoir of depression and faith, and it is it's basically the story of my life from age 11 until just a few years ago, and it tells in really brutal, honest detail how I've experienced these two voices throughout my life, the dark voice of depression telling me that I'm worthless, and the kind of the quiet voice of God whispering to me that I'm loved and that I'm okay. And, I talk in there about my 2 suicide attempts. I talk in there about how I actively stopped myself from being a pastor for a number of years because I didn't think I was worthy, and kind of how God turned me around to that. And I talk about how I've kind of come out to congregations and what that's been like. And I think, throughout the book, there's a real through line of hope that it's, that I don't believe my depression is something I'll ever completely be free of, but it's something I can learn to live with because there are really wonderful and powerful moments of hope and joy that come, even if it's going to be bad again, it's not going to be bad all the time. And that's,
and it won't be as bad as it is.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, throughout the book, you can see as I gained more and more coping mechanisms, and as I kind of started recognizing more and more what was going on, I'm more able to see that. And I think you're right that the lows aren't as low once you've done the work. Yeah.
I ran into a medicine that totally cured me from apathy. All weekend. I would literally lay in bed all weekend. And they came up with an experimental drug. I don't really want to name it at this point, but it is unbelievable as far as it. I used to wake up in the morning feeling miserable. Now I just wake up, I'm ready to go.
Oh, well, I'm glad it's working for you. That's great.
There's so much, I think it may be causing more anxiety, but we'll have to check into that.
Yeah.
But I guess my last question, is there anything we left out here that you would like to talk about with the listener?
Well, I think I'd just like to emphasize that there is hope. I think that's what I see through my faith and through my understanding of God is that there is always hope, even in the darkest of times. And if you are struggling and you're not sure where that hope is, just hang on. And I also think it's helpful to open up as best you can. If you have somebody you can share with, let them know how you're feeling. Sometimes even just talking about it can be the beginning of healing. So I just encourage you to hang on and to open up as you can.
Well put. As far as websites, I'm going to put them all on the description of the episode. Okay. But is there anyone that you would like to tell our audience?
Sure. My website is thescholtes.com. It's TheScholtes.com. And there you can read my blog, which I update at least weekly, sometimes more, as well as sign up for my weekly newsletter about the intersection of faith and mental illness, and also learn more about my book. And there's links to where you can buy that as well. So.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been a terrific guest.
Okay.
Well-spoken, of course. And I wish you all the luck in the world. I will pray for you.
Thank you. And I will pray for you as well. God bless.